timing is really everything. And when you're feeling that, well, for lack of a better way to put it, that universal momentum giving you a gwig, 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 good. That's what I was really trying to say. Good and quick. When you put good and quick together, you get quick. So when you've got that universal momentum giving you a nice quick kick in the backside, you don't want to waste that momentum on like navel gazing, really, right? You want to take action. You want to strike while the iron is hot. And you're in a position where you can be a completely immovable force for change if you really want to. And let's face it, you've been tasked with the responsibility that needs to change, it needs to shift. You've been doing all that you can, and it just has felt to you like, well, something is in the way. It's almost like, when you have the brakes on and you're accidentally revving the engine and you let your brakes off, there's suddenly that zooming forward, right? And it kind of catches you a little bit unawares. You're not really, fully conscious or cognizant of the fact that you're accelerating forward because it's hit you all of a sudden. And so then when you regain your awareness that you actually are beginning to gain some momentum, you go, right, I better take advantage of this, grab the wheel, steer this in the right direction while I still can. And who could blame you? As I was saying, your cause is righteous, but there's a more subtle motivation which might be driving you. And I'm not saying you're being selfish. I'm not saying there is something wrong in what you're wanting. In other words, that other force which you may not be paying attention to, right? It's not wrong, but it's not perhaps being carefully thought through. Now, with this particular lunar eclipse energy, which, by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with what a lunar eclipse is, it's when we have a full moon in close proximity to one of the nodes. And we're having this particular lunar eclipse in Hasta nakshatra. Hasta deals with the hands and everything that the hands do. Hands can keep things away. We've been dealing with that energy recently. Hands can also be open to receive, but when we're not paying attention, hands can sometimes want to grip that steering wheel a little too tightly and think that they're in control, and then they miss the bigger picture of a gift which could actually be on offer to them and ready to fall into their hands for them to have and to carry and to move forward with. But when you've got your hands on the steering wheel and you're trying to control things and you're being driven by something which is, well, perhaps not carefully thought through, your inner sat nav gets thwarted and you end up going the wrong direction down the road. And I'd like to help you to right that wrong direction that's compelling you on your onward journey, for lack of a better way to put it. And I have recently lowered the prices on my astrological services. You can find those new prices reflected above. So lunar eclipses, eclipses in general, like when we hit eclipse seasons, probably a better way to say it, we're always going to have a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse within 2 weeks of each other. That period in between is a very powerful force for change. But people quite often have, well, not really clear perspectives on what eclipses are all about. And that makes sense in and of itself because eclipses are pointing in the direction of something that's hidden from our view, something we're not fully cognizant of. And so it makes sense that eclipses themselves would also be something we have a hard time being cognizant of. So just to dispel a couple of myths about eclipses, eclipses are transits like any other transit. They're a full moon when we're having a lunar eclipse, and a new moon in close proximity to one of the nodes when we're having a solar eclipse. So they're just a normal transit, a normal full moon and new moon, respectively. And so people often think that when that transit's there, something powerful is immediately going to happen in their lives. And also, they quite often think something bad and powerful is going to happen in their lives. And eclipses are a bit disruptive because they need to be. They're like a cosmic reset point in terms of our energetic and astrological year. They're giving us an opportunity to change our course, to make a shift in direction. And wherever they happen to be transiting in our chart, marks an area of our lives that we're going to be making some changes in addition to whatever the eclipse happens to be forming an aspect to in our charts. Those are things to take into consideration. And again, just briefly, if you want to schedule a consultation to know more about what this eclipse energy is all about for you, the link to do so is just above. But we can make really positive and constructive uses of these eclipse portals if we're consciously aware of what's going on. And that's precisely what I'm trying to bring you to the understanding of. With this particular lunar eclipse, we have Venus and Saturn in Purva Bhadrapada, which are forming an angle to the eclipse. And with Venus and Saturn in Purva Bhadrapada is a two-faced individual. Now, that sounds more negative than it really is. We all have sides of ourselves that we're not really fully aware of, things that drive us that we might not be paying attention to. And in terms of you being able to get the best from your actions, you need to be a little more aware of what might be compelling you. Right? So there's the one part of you that knows that your cause is righteous, and that's causing you to be an immovable force for action. But beneath the surface, there might be something else that's not quite so, it's not that it's unrighteous, and it's not that it's necessarily selfish, but it's just not carefully thought through, not carefully considered in terms of the impact of that action on all of the other parties involved in your life. But you don't have time to think about that right now. You need to grab that wheel. You need to go down the road, but you do need to stop and think about it, because if you don't, you could very soon careen off the road and end up sidetracked, lost, somewhere you don't want to go. So, even though it may feel to you like the time is right for action and that time is now, don't ignore that, but give at least a moment's notice to what you might otherwise be ignoring. That's going to do it for this look at the lunar eclipse, which is taking place in Hasta Nakshatra. Overnight on the 24th into the 25th of March, dependent upon where you are in the world in the year 2024. That's not dependent on where you are in the world. That would be crazy. But until next time, please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.